So there's been a lot of questions about the new season of Mandalorian, and I realized that a lot of those questions are coming from people who are not big-time fans like I am. So I thought I'd make this video real quick to show you just exactly what's going on in our little show. And let's start with Chapter 9, The Marshal. This one is very cool because they bring in a character named Cod Vanth. Now, you might not know him from anywhere else, but I know him from a book that came out a few years back called Star Wars Aftermath. In case you're wondering, The Mandalorian takes place 5 years after the end of Return of the Jedi and about 35 years before The Force Awakens. And in this book, they give a little bit of history as to what happened in between both time periods. And during chapter on a man who finds Mandalorian armor and protects a little city whose name was Cod Vanth. That was his only and one appearance in all of Star Wars. And people assumed that that was that and that would be the end of it. But lo and behold, he shows up here on Mandalorian. And he's played by Timothy Oliphant, which you might know him from other Western cowboy shows like Justified. He's an old hat to all this sheriff stuff. After Mando meets him, he decides to take the armor with him, which will set up what happens later. Chapter 10, The Passenger. Mandalorian agrees to take a frog lady and her eggs from Tatooine to the moon of Trask. Never heard of this place, but apparently it exists. In exchange for information on other Mandalorians, Mando started his quest by trying to find Mandalorians to help him find Jedi to help him take care of the child. Well, due to the fact that the Frog Lady's eggs are so fragile and have to be taken care of as best as they can without anything bad happening to them, they have to travel at sublight speed, which is not hyperspace. So they go super slow. That means they just take the scenic route. On their journey, they are confronted by X-Wing fighters who force them onto a planet, and there they have to escape peril. There's not much going on here canon-wise, except for the fact that it's showing you how the New Republic operates now that the Empire has been gone for 5 years. Chapter 11, The Harris.
This is where the fun begins.
The Frog Lady reunites with her husband, and they direct Mando to a place where they can find other Mandalorians. They find a fisherman who tries to take Mando to an offshore place, but it's actually a trap. The fisherman and his crew just want the Mando's armor, and almost kill the child in the process. Luckily, Mando gets help from 3 random Mandalorians, one of them being Bo-Katan. And here's where another Star Wars bit comes in, where she is actually a character from the cartoon series Clone Wars that was around a few years ago and just finished its run earlier this year. Bo here is the sister to Queen of Mandalore, or was the Queen of Mandalore, Duchess Satine, who used to be an old flame of Obi-Wan's. This is her first live-action appearance. She's also played by the same actress who voiced her in the Clone Wars, Katie Sackhoff, and is pretty much based off her. Mando gets to help Bo-Katan take down an Imperial ship with a whole bunch of weapons. Bo gives Mando a name for him to go off on.
This planet of Corvus. There you'll find Ahsoka Tano.
Chapter 12, The Siege. In this episode, before Mando could reach the Jedi, Ahsoka Tano, he first has to make it back to planet Navarro, where his friends Cara Dune and Greef Karga reside, to get his ship fixed. Greef asks him for some help to take down some Imperials that are hiding on the planet. They go and try to take him down and discover some weird cloning tubes no one really knew was there. Now this is kind of hinting at the fact that maybe they could be starting up the First Order, the bad guys that eventually rise from the ashes of the Empire in The Force Awakens. And it turns out that the Empire was looking for the child because the child has a high M count, which is a code for midichlorians, which is a bad word that a whole bunch of Star Wars fans don't like to use, so that's why they called it an M count.
Master, sir, I heard Yoda talking about midichlorians. I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
they live inside me.
But it basically is microscopic bacteria that's inside your blood system that tells you whether or not you are Jedi. It's been blown way out of proportion, and it makes sense in story, but outside of story, it just sounds kind of like a count meter of how much power you have. The Mandalorian takes the child and flies off into the sunset. Chapter 13, The Jedi. Mando and the child arrive at the planet Corvus, where they find a city that's being taken over by a new character I've never heard of, but I'm familiar with their first name, Morgan Elsbeth. She tries to hire Mando to take down a Jedi that is bugging her, and it turns out it's the one Jedi that he happens to be looking for, Ahsoka Tano. The Mandalorian finds Ahsoka outside of the town and presents her to the child. Using the Force, Ahsoka communicates with the child, and the child reveals its name to be Grogu, and that he had began training as a Jedi before the rise of the Empire. So, if you are a little bit familiar with Star Wars, you'll know that in Episode 3, Anakin Skywalker falls and becomes Darth Vader, and sends in a battalion of clone troopers to the Jedi Temple to murder everybody. Well, Vader decides to kill all the children, but he might have missed one. Grogu was there that night, but for some reason somebody mysteriously got him out of there, and he's been living in perhaps prison for years, or hidden away by some mysterious Jedi who we may or may not know. Mando helps Ahsoka take down Morgan Elsbeth, and Ahsoka confronts Elsbeth. They fight each other in a very, very cool fight, but eventually she loses to Ahsoka, and Ahsoka asks her about her master, Grand Admiral Thrawn. This guy's gonna be a big player once he comes in. He originally started in some old Star Wars books, and his story originally began somewhere around the older movies, but they've moved him around since. You can catch him on the show Rebels. He's basically a very, very smart Sherlock Holmes-like blue alien that the Empire hired. He was last seen being flung into space, so she's now looking for him. Afterwards, Ahsoka refuses to train Grogu due to his attachment to the Mandalorian. Instead, she directs them to an ancient temple on a planet, Typhloon, where Grogu can use the Force to decide his own faith. She also gives Mando a spear that Morgan Elsbeth was offering him, made out of Beskar steel, the same stuff that's made out of his armor. Chapter 14, The Tragedy. But in this episode, Grogu and Mando are immediately at the Temple of Typhloon. Mando puts Grogu onto the Seeing Stone, and Grogu meditates, surrounding himself with a big giant blue orb field thingy. Right at that moment, Boba Fett arrives with Ferric, who you might remember from the first season of Mandalorian, who was presumably dead, but due to Star Wars technology, got to live again. Boba Fett kindly asks Mando for the armor that he took from Cod Vance at the beginning of the season, because it belonged to his father, Jango Fett, from the prequel series, and himself. Mando agrees to return the armor in exchange for Grogu's safety. At that moment, Moff Gideon arrives with stormtroopers. Ferric and the Mandalorian try to fight off the stormtroopers, but they just keep coming and coming in waves. At which time, Grogu decides to take a nap, and then Gideon destroys the Razor Crest before deploying his Dark Troopers. These guys are pretty cool because they showed up in a Star Wars game in the 90s and have never really appeared in live action in any form up until now. They capture Grogu and fly off, and to honor their deal, Fett and Ferric promise to help Mando get Grogu back. They fly back to Navarro, where they ask Cara Dune for help and to break out the criminal Mayfield, who you might remember was in last season's episode about the prisoners. That's as far as I can really go for now, because, like I said, there's only 2 more episodes left from the point of this recording, but I figured I'd give it out all this information until, we get more info. But I hope anyone that has been watching found this informative. I might come back after the season is over and wrap it up and give you more information then. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy. This is the way.